Hey everyone, it's Kristen. So today is Sunday, Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Um, so for Saturday, Sunday, we have this panel from, I think it was Thor like 146 or something. It's Hercules fighting his dad, Zeus. Um, but anyway, we won't talk about that very long because I want to get to this next stamp. And it's actually Mary Jane. They gave her her own stamp. So, and that's kind of why I wore this again, because you always see, especially lately, more so, Mary Jane wearing, a Spider-Man t-shirt. And as I explained in my last video, um, Friday's video, I was like, how long ago was that I saw this at Walmart. I thought it was really cute. Unfortunately, they had already sold all the smaller sizes, so it's pretty huge. But it's still fun. I still had to have it. So anyway. So the fact that, yeah, Mary Jane got her own stamp, I was pretty excited about. As I explained, first discovered Spider-Man through the Spider-Man animated series in the 90s. And of course, Mary Jane was the main love interest in that series, in that cartoon. So she's always been, a favorite character of mine, honestly. So, Mary Jane Watson from Fantastic Four number 147, June 74. Stamp also appears in Man Thing number 10, October 74. And this is from her famous appearance where, okay, well, before I show you that, she was mentioned because Aunt May and her neighbor and friend Anna Watson are always trying to get Peter, to date a nice girl, and Anna is like, well, my niece. And so Mary Jane's mentioned all the way back in Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 15. And then she has an appearance, a cameo in Amazing Spider-Man 25, where she's hidden behind a plant. And then this stamp comes from Amazing Spider-Man 42, where she actually makes her full debut. And this is where she utters her famous line, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." But of course, at the time, Peter was actually dating Gwen Stacy. And Stan Lee has said that he wanted, I think it was Stan Lee that said he wanted, Peter and Gwen to end up together, to be together. But everyone liked Mary Jane more because Mary Jane was fun and she was, had less inhibitions and just way more fun than Gwen, who was pretty serious and just kind of, basically a nice girl. And she and Peter were so much more alike, and I think people liked the fact that Mary Jane seemed more like a real character in that she, made mistakes, and she wasn't always like the nicest person. She could be a little like snide and things like that. So anyway, yeah, then they decided, well, I guess we have to kill off Gwen Stacy, which led to one of the most famous Spider-Man stories ever, the death of Gwen Stacy. And so after, because really what happened is Peter started dating Mary Jane, but found that, they just kind of clashed. Their personalities were so different. And so he decided to date Gwen instead. He chose Gwen. And then, yeah, the whole thing where, everyone liked Mary Jane more, even though they tried to make Gwen out to be more beautiful, more, just more interesting. It just didn't work, and people still liked Mary Jane more and were clamoring for Peter and Mary Jane to be together. So, yeah, they killed Gwen. Poor Gwen. They killed Gwen off. And then after her death, Mary Jane was shown to have a softer side. Like, she went and she comforted Peter, and that's when, they kind of got together, really. They dated seriously, and Peter proposed. Mary Jane said no, kind of freaked out, left, and then that's when he started dating Felicia, but of course, then Mary Jane came back and she saw that he was with Felicia. But Felicia, like I explained all this in the Black Cat origin story video that I did, she was always more in love with Spider-Man than she was with Peter. She never understood why Peter felt the need to be Spider-Man, or why Spider-Man felt the need to be Peter, in other words. So, and Mary Jane told Peter that she knew his secret identity, and she didn't care. That didn't make her like him any less. So he proposes again. She still says no. But then she has some family drama going on. She helps her sister incarcerate her not so great father, and she helps save Spider-Man from a spider slayer, and basically changes her mind, and they get married. And so I brought out a prop because you know how much I love props, and this is my Spider-Man Mary Jane wedding Barbie. I don't have this issue. I wish I did. Maybe they'll reprint it one of these days so I can get a copy. But yeah, and they even had a wedding, a real life wedding, between Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and Stanley officiated and all this stuff. So it was 1987, and here's the cover of the comic book. So yeah, like I said, I really liked her. I love her dress. I think this is a really fun dress. Some of their wedding dresses that have been in comics have not been that great, but I love her dress. So I had to get that Barbie, of course. So they get married. She does modeling, and then once she gets blacklisted from modeling because this billionaire guy is obsessed with her, and she turns him down, and so he gets her blacklisted from modeling. She goes on a soap opera, and it's like a hospital drama, and her character on the show is kind of mean, and she's kind of an airhead, so she doesn't really enjoy playing her so much, and she gets into all these crazy situations with crazy stalker fans, and so she returns to modeling because some of the fans start to believe that she actually is this mean person that she is on the show, and they don't like her, and they do mean things to her, and they, like I said, stalk her. And so yeah, she goes back to modeling, and years down the road, she becomes pregnant, and unfortunately the baby ends up being stillborn because an agent of the Green Goblin poisons Mary Jane and kind of causes that her pregnancy to unfortunately and this happened during the Clone Saga with Ben Reilly, and Peter was because they faked the results saying that Ben was the real Peter Parker and Peter was the clone, and it was really hard on Peter. It was really distressing, and of course nobody liked that storyline. And he ended up the Jackal, a Spider-Man villain, hypnotized Peter into trying to kill Mary Jane, and Ben Reilly stopped him, and ultimately Ben met his death battling the Green Goblin. So then they randomly have MJ studying psychology, which I don't know why, and she begging Peter to quit being Spider-Man. And then she starts to model again. So the psychology thing didn't last very long. And Peter is Spider-Man behind her back because, she doesn't want him to be Spider-Man anymore. So he has to do it behind her back. And MJ moves to LA, because they go through a lot of ups and downs. Their relationship is strained a lot, especially when it comes to this next storyline. So she goes off to LA. She starts to appear in movies and stuff, and apparently it appears like she got into a plane crash and was killed. but really she was kidnapped by this crazed fan person who wanted, to be with her. Um, so the just all the stress of everything that's gone on causes, Peter and Mary Jane to split, but they do reconcile later. But then they split again later. Anyway, so you have Civil War where Iron Man, convinces Peter it's a great idea to reveal his secret identity, which puts a target on Mary Jane and Aunt May, which I feel like secret identities are there for a reason. Like, you don't want to necessarily disclose that because, yeah, then all the bad guys know who your loved ones are and can come after them. I always thought that was, not a great idea. But then, you have people who their secret identities are known, like the Fantastic Four, and yet that stuff doesn't happen to them as often. I mean, it still happens, of course. The Franklin, their son, has been kidnapped and stuff, but it doesn't seem to happen as bad, if that makes sense. So anyway, they have to go on the run. Mary Jane can't take, high profile jobs anymore because, people now know who she is married to. And so she and her aunt, Anna go into hiding, and they're hiding at this motel, and this agent assassin of Kingpin's tries to shoot Peter, but accidentally ends up shooting Aunt May instead. Because, well, I said Anna, but really it was Aunt May and Mary Jane who had to go on the run and hide out in this motel. Originally they were hiding out in Stark Tower, but then it was, they were discovered, so they had to move locations. So anyway, then the whole One More Day storyline comes into play, which, I hate this storyline. Still hate it today. It caused so many problems in the comics after it. So basically, Mephisto has determined that their daughter is going to stop him from taking over the Earth one day. So he needs to break up their marriage and make sure the daughter never happens. So he says, like, hey, I'll heal your Aunt May if you are no longer married, if you have never been married. And Mary Jane says that, she'll agree to that only if he also erases Peter's identity from everyone's minds. Like, nobody knows that he's Spider-Man. And then they can just go back to, the way it was before. So pretty much he undoes their marriage and everyone forgets Peter is Spider-Man. And they never got married. They just dated seriously. And apparently one day when they were supposed to get married, Peter's activities as Spider-Man led him to not be there, or, something happened. And so, and she asked him to give up being Spider-Man and he couldn't. So they just went their separate ways. Like, there was no reconciling that. So that's the false story that was planted. And they go back and forth, like they still have those kind of feelings for each other because, you can't totally erase all those feelings in all those years of history, something, like, they can't walk around having years missing from their memories because that's very suspicious. So they still care about each other, and they're back and forth a whole lot. And when he's not dating MJ, he's dating, Felicia sometimes, or he's dating someone else. But yeah, they always seem to go back to each other and then they split up again. And, MJ will say, I love you, but I can't be with you. Like, I love you, but, I don't want to be ruled by this dual life that you have. I want to create my own life, and you should just move on because, like, I need to move on. So, and then there's, events that happen like Spider Island where everyone gets spider powers and Mary Jane gets spider powers. And, then and that's when Peter starts dating Carly. and Mary Jane randomly buys a nightclub, and then when Doc Ock is in Spider-Man's body as Superior Spider-Man, he and Mary Jane start dating because of course she thinks it's Peter, and but Doc actually starts to really care about Mary Jane. Dazzler's in the tray sleeping again, and she moved and almost she shifted the light, so hopefully you can still see me. But she's just so goofy. Anyway, oh yeah, so Doc really started to develop feelings for her, so he broke it off basically because he's like, I really actually do care about her and I don't want to hurt her. But Peter got his body back eventually, and MJ says, I know that wasn't really you, but at the same time, we're still not going to date. So her nightclub's a success, and then it gets destroyed in a superhero battle. So Iron Man, of all people, offers her a job to be his executive assistant to run the company while he's off doing, saving the world, which is a random choice, but they have to. Mary Jane, they just I feel like they use her, especially in the later years, have just used her character randomly for things since she's not with Peter. But she's still a character that's been around for so long that they're like, well, we have to give her something to do. Hence, the Spider Island, having powers, and then Tony offering her a job, and then having this nightclub. And so Peter and MJ start dating again, and then she takes off to make this movie, and it's actually, the Mysterio is actually the director, but she doesn't know it at first, and he makes this movie about the Sinister Six, and Vulture actually attacks the film because he's not cool with them using his likeness, and that big budget action scene ends up being the best scene of the whole movie because him attacking, they just started filming him attacking, and it was better than anything they could have come up with. So it actually turns out to be a huge hit. But it's later revealed that Mysterio, when he, and I've talked about this too, when he went in and descended into hell and came back, he was basically, Kindred basically controls him. This demon construct that Mephisto made. And so he unfortunately has to do his bidding, and one of the it's so complicated. So Kindred is kind of like Harry Osborn's clone, soul, whatever. Harry Osborn's actual soul is in hell, and this is a construct of Harry Osborn, and so he's, kind of, because him and MJ dated a really long time ago, but she, especially when she was first introduced, she didn't want to be tied down, so she didn't date Harry for very long, and that's also why she said no to Peter's proposals. So, he, basically told Mysterio to lure Mary Jane, which makes me think of the cartoon, the original cartoon, where Mysterio kidnaps Mary Jane, and then it just left on a cliffhanger, and we never see that Peter found Mary Jane. But of course, in X-Men 97, we have the cameo of Peter and Mary Jane, in the window. So we're assuming he found her, but we don't know how because, we didn't, it was just a brief cameo. So anyway, oh yeah, and of course, there was the time. Sorry, I think this was before the movie where she became a Carnage symbiote, but she was cured by Flash Thompson's anti-venom symbiote, something like that. Yeah, and so anyway, the movie Kindred, it's revealed that it's actually Harry Osborn's. Oh my gosh, this is so complicated. Okay, let me see if I can remember. An AI version of Harry Osborn created kids from Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy's DNA, and they're twins, and their names are Sarah and Gabriel, and they are out to get. Oh, Dazzler's awake. I don't know if you can see her, but yeah, she's right here. Um, are out to get Peter and MJ, and but then seeing the love that they have for each other and how much they care for each other, that freed the Sarah and Gabriel spirits from kindred so that they could die finally. It was a weird story. Like, I don't like the implication of Norman and Gwen having kids, like, at all. That's just really weird. And the fact that Harry would do that, even in AI version or, alternate universe version, whatever, of him would do that, it's just weird to me. I don't like it. It just, I don't know. Anyway, so finally they like defeat Kindred and, yeah. And yeah, Mephisto, his hold's broken. So in one instance, you have also Mary Jane and Felicia teaming up quite a few times. Because of course when Mary Jane got back from wherever she went, and she and Felicia first met, because Felicia was dating Peter at the time, they didn't like each other, but then they grew to, be friends or whatever. So they've teamed up a couple times, like when Peter was hospitalized, battling the UFOs. It's like a team of 4 supervillains. They teamed up to, save him from the hood. They also teamed up when Count Belasco, who created the ruler of Limbo, created magic, really. When he pulled Black Cat into Limbo to do him a favor, but he accidentally pulled Mary Jane in there as well, because, like I said, they're friends and they kind of get together to talk about Peter and, make sure he's okay, whatever. And so he said, I need you to steal the soul sword back for me so that I can, rule Limbo once again. And once you've done that, then I'll send you back to Earth. So they teamed up for that too. And Black Cat realized that Mary Jane had powers, and she has powers from like this tech watch. And she later uses her powers and actually dons a costume and calls herself Jackpot. And at some point, before she becomes Jackpot, she actually dons Peter's Iron Spider suit in order to help, like, Iron Man and Peter defeat some villain. I forget. Look at this. I've been talking about her for like 23 minutes, basically, because I barely talked about the first picture at all. It's just so complicated. The comics are so complicated, and there's so much to remember. Oh, and then, okay, now we get to, the weirdest thing. So this Mayan god of, chaos and destruction comes to Earth, and he basically needs to sacrifice Mary Jane and Peter in order to attain godhood, especially Mary Jane. So when he first meets them, he marks them with, a sacrifice, like a brand. And it's weird because, in a flash of light, they disappear, and what happens is that they go to this future, and they meet Paul, and Paul tells them that, this God is this is what he's trying to do, and I'm going to send you guys back so that he can't do this. He can't take over the Earth. So he creates this teleportation device, and Mary Jane accidentally, in the battle, sets it off and sends just Peter back. And so she's stuck in this time with Paul. And so even though it hasn't been that long on the outside, in that alternate future reality, they've been there for 4 years. And they have, no one else to lean on but each other. And in those 4 years, they adopt 2 kids. I think Owen and Stephanie? Can't remember the girl's name. I could be wrong. Like I said, there's a lot to remember. So they adopt these two kids. And so when Spider-Man, with the help of Norman Osborn, finally is able to rescue them, he sees that Mary Jane now has this whole little family, and she doesn't want to give up this little family because, like I said, it's been 4 years for them. So she's been with this guy and with these kids for 4 years. Well, not the kid. Well, Paul for sure 4 years. The kid's not as long, but almost as long. But anyway, so they end up battling the Mayan god, which is actually turns out to be Paul's father. And Paul, he feels really bad. MJ knew that's the situation. He feels really bad and tries to, make amends for what his father has done, in this future dimension and what he's trying to do now. And so the father tries to, kill the Scarlet Lady or whatever, meaning Mary Jane. But Miss Marvel dies instead, protecting her, even though Mary Jane, has her jackpot powers. But, they're obviously not enough. And the father, Mayan god person, he gets destroyed by the spirit of the god because he sacrificed the wrong sacrifice. And that was, Miss Marvel's death, and it was supposed to be like a huge deal, and everyone was so sad, so upset. And then you see her, like I've mentioned before, on the cover of the Tony and Emma wedding issue, sitting on Giant Man's shoulder. So you knew that they were bringing her back right away. So it's like, why bother? They tried to, get that emotional, pull out of you. But even before the comic book had even released, and, the death of Miss Marvel, they were calling it, but even before it had released, they had the promo image for the Tony and Emma wedding issue, and you saw her sitting on Giant Man's shoulder. So you're like, well, okay, so she's not really dead. So basically, kind of like, why do I care? So I just, it just, me, I have a thing about that. Just them trying to push Miss Marvel on, especially X-Men fans, so hard, because now she's in this series of 5 comics where she goes back in time to these major X-Men events. Like, she was actually there when, of course she wasn't there, but they're making it to be where she was actually there, and that just bothers me. I feel like some events are sacred and they shouldn't mess with those. Shouldn't mess with them, shouldn't revisit them, just whatever. I'm just irritated. Anyway, so getting off topic, sorry. So, so Paul and the kids, Paul and MJ's kids they adopted are just magical constructs, basically, to keep MJ tied to Paul, basically. So that sucks. She falls into a deep depression, kind of like Wanda did after she lost her kids. Yeah, so, so bad that, Agatha had to erase her memory of her even ever having those kids. So she's pretty depressed after that, and she starts to, kind of deal with her depression by being jackpot even more, and even though she's with Paul, she goes out with Peter and fights crime. And then at some point she's like, well, I don't know if we should do this anymore, fight crime together, because it's kind of confusing. But she still does. And then they have the whole, Venom symbiote wars. And they ended up adopting, Paul and MJ, adopting Dylan Brock. Because, he's this troubled youth and he's been through so much. And, they just are trying to fill that void that their kids left. And so Paul is, pretty perturbed at Dylan because he's a troubled youth, and he's like, his trauma is no excuse for him being an unruly, disrespectful person. And Dylan comes back with, well, you're so stupid, you didn't even realize that your kids weren't real. Something like that. Ouch. Harsh. So, and then, and this was dumb too, but You know, they have the all new Venom. Who is this character? And then like a couple months later, it was revealed to be Mary Jane, which I'm like, okay, that's weird. That's, like I said, they have to keep coming up with ways to make her stay relevant because she has been around a long time. She is a popular character, but I don't agree with them making her Venom. So in order to defeat the symbiote during the symbiote wars that had taken control of her, Venom actually like put a sliver of itself in her jackpot watch so that she had the power to defeat this symbiote. But the Venom sliver stayed with her, and then when it was dying, it reached out to Mary Jane, bonded with her, so that they were keeping each other alive, basically. And so now, and then, yeah, she was revealed, months later to be the new Venom. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't agree with that, but, whatever. It's comic books, and, yeah, they have to keep coming up with, like, new ideas. Some of them, a lot of them, I will say, don't work, like the Clone Wars with Peter and the whole One More Day, and just, yeah, all these crazy ideas. So, but, yeah, I've always said that comics are likened to soap operas, where they have all these people that die, but they're not really dead, and they come back, or there's a evil twin brother, or their dad comes back from the dead, and whatever, all these crazy plot lines, because you have to try to keep it going, keep it interesting, so people keep watching and tuning in. So I kind of, yeah, I liken that to comic books too, because nobody ever really stays dead except for the two I mentioned, and they can't keep the status quo for very long, otherwise they feel like people get bored, and they're constantly reorganizing and redoing comics and starting X-Men #1, Uncanny X-Men #1 to Spider-Man 1. Like Spider-Man's in its like 6th, 7th volume now, because they're trying to get new readers, which I understand, because of course the comic book industry, you don't want it to go away. I mean, I wouldn't want that, but so they're constantly reinventing it, rebranding it, trying to pull in new readers, and with some readers are intimidated when they have all this like the 60-year plus history of comic books, and they're like, holy cow, how am I supposed to know all that? So they they basically redo it so that they don't need to know all that. They simplify it, which is good and not good. But anyway, so this video has gone on way too long already, but who knew there was so much to talk about with Mary Jane? She's been like, she's been through a lot, we'll just say that. So anyway, yeah, so my next video should be Tuesday. So if you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching me, like I said in other videos, I don't really get to talk about superheroes with people in real life, because none of my friends, family are really into that stuff, so they don't want to hear me ramble on about superheroes, and they have no idea what I'm talking about, which is fine. They don't need to know everything, but still, they're like, have this kind of glazed look on their face, which, I get it. But so it's nice for me to be able to talk with you guys about superheroes, because then I feel like I get to share my passions, my likes with other people that are, like me. So yeah, subscribe, like my videos, share them, anything that you want to do like that, I would appreciate. So, yeah, I will see you guys in the future for more videos. Until then, bye.